Hello, good afternoon. I am joining you here today to talk about one aspect of a Sonlight curriculum. And so I wore my t-shirt today that actually has a book on it. I think it's the only shirt I have that has a book on it. So I had to do that one today for sure. Because we're going to talk about read-alouds. Now, I wrote down something that my daughter had read. She was 12. We had just finished a read-aloud, and she said, "There's one terrible thing about read-alouds." And I put it on the app to see what people would guess that she said about the read-alouds. And Sheila said you have to wait for someone to read them to you. Now, that is a terrible thing, but that is not the right answer. Jonna thought that maybe it's terrible that you might cry in front of your siblings. And, well, that never happened with my kids. They did not cry, but they knew when it was sad. And they would look at me, and they would just know I was about to burst into tears, and they just waited for it to happen. And then it would. But that is not the end of her quote. It turns out that most of the people that guessed did get it right. The one terrible thing about read-alouds is they end. And those were her words. And it turns out, though, that ending of one book actually led to anticipation, because neither one of my two could concentrate on anything else until they knew what the next read-aloud would be. And something really fun that happened doing 2 levels of Sonlight, when my daughter would find out what the next read-aloud would be, it was really super fun when she was so excited about it, because she remembered enjoying it so much when her older brother did it just a couple of years ago. And that really was a neat thing. So, question, why does Sonlight include read-alouds in their curriculum? It is not the traditional way to do school. I've seen more and more ads and things for online homeschool, and I don't think they do read-alouds. I know that I didn't do read-alouds growing up in public school and private school, but I do remember my dad reading aloud to me every night at bedtime for most of my childhood. Precious, precious memories. And so as a young parent, even before I thought about homeschooling, I made sure to incorporate reading aloud at bedtime too. And then a few years later, my kids were into preschool age, and I started using Sonlight. I was working at a tutoring company, and I wrote a little article for their newsletter. And so I did a little research on the importance of reading aloud, and the couple things I found out, and I imagine you all have probably heard of these things, but I did find out that their research has shown that there is an association between reading with your child and a child's language skills, their reading skills, and their reading achievement. And a child's exposure to literacy early in life is one of the most important predictors of success in school. And all of that is related to reading aloud to your children. And I see that a lot of y'all are joining me. Make sure, if you do have any questions or comments, to put them in the chat as we go along. But there's some kind of hidden gems on the Sonlight website that many of you may not know that they are there. So I pulled some information to share with you all about Sonlight's reasons for including read-alouds in their packages. So I'm not an improv person. I'm always prepared with my paper with my notes to make sure I let y'all know what I wanted to let you know. So I'll be looking down here so I can get these right. And these are the reasons that Sonlight has included read-alouds in their curriculum. One of them is to introduce your children to great literature that is beyond their personal reading capacity. Because at the younger ages, you are reading books to them that they never could pick up and read to themselves. And another one is to develop within your children a lifelong love of reading. Even though they may not be able to read a good book on their own, when you read great literature to them, it creates a thirst to read. And they begin to think, I love books, and one day I'm going to read a book like this. Another reason, to expand their vocabulary, to build listening skills, including the ability to visualize the meaning of spoken words, to develop an ear for good oral reading, to develop oral reading skills, having heard quality oral reading done by you, your children will imitate you. And the last one on the list is to give you and your children a context for sharing mutually significant times together. And I've got a question here from Diana. We are behind like 3 to 4 weeks. My daughter doesn't want to stop her routine in order for me to catch up with her. So you're behind does that mean you're ahead in the read-alouds or you're behind in the read-alouds? I want to make sure I understand your comment. In order for me to catch up. Okay. Yeah, I'll wait for a little clarification on that if you could. If you're behind on your read-alouds or behind on your other subjects. But honestly, the way Sonlight puts together the instructor's guide, it really it suits itself to not being in the same place in the curriculum with the different things, because the read-aloud discussion questions and the reader discussion questions are all separate by book, and so you can just keep that with the book, and it doesn't really matter where you are. So you can definitely just go with the flow with that, and that really is okay. Read-alouds always came with us on vacation, because we could stop math wherever we were, but we couldn't just put this book down and leave it for 1 week or 2 weeks, and so they always came on vacation. So we were never ever in the same spot in the instructor's guide on different subjects, and that it works out fine. At the end of the year, you just kind of taper things off. You finish some things, and then you finish some other things, and it's kind of a gradual end. So I kind of liked how that happened. Back to my notes here. So, reading aloud. Sometimes it might just seem like the icing on the cake of your homeschool, like something to get to if you have time. That's the fun part of school. We have to make sure to get all the other stuff done first, right? Well, the read-alouds that Sonlight includes in their packages are actually there for a very important reason. All the books, all the read-alouds in Sonlight packages have actually passed a 7-part test in order to be included in the spot they are in the package. And that's another little hidden thing. You can find this on the website. It used to be in the catalog. I'm not sure if it is now. And so if there is a book that you're reading aloud with a Sonlight package, it has passed the 7-part test. Number 1, it has real or realistic characters. Heroes should not be flawless, and anti-heroes ought not to be thoroughly detestable. They need to be nuanced and complex the way real people are. And number 2, solid character development. The protagonist must change for the better over the course of the book. And number 3, content that adds to the reader's cultural literacy. The book's plot, the setting, the characters, or vocabulary, something, must contribute to a reader's knowledge about world events and cultures, or their understanding of the way things work in human relations and in life. Number 4, intriguing, multi-dimensional plot. And number 5, emotionally compelling. The story has to move you. And number 6, it needs to be verbally beautiful. The writing must be superb and allow for fluent reading, silently or aloud. And number 7, rereadable. And that is so true. Many of us do multiple levels of Sonlight, and so once you read one book, you're going to be reading it again in a couple of years, and it really is a pleasant experience to do that. So you may not have realized that whatever read-aloud you're reading right now has passed the 7-part test, and that is why it is included. Jonna has a comment about if you are behind on your read-alouds, you might make some time on your days off to do your catch-up, and that would not disrupt the schedule. In our house, it was never a problem to get ahead or do a little extra reading together. It was super fun. So I think I've made the case for how important reading aloud is, all of that research that shows all the good things it does for their future if you start reading aloud at a young age to your children. But what does it look like in your house, in your homeschool? I generally would let my kids choose what subjects they did and when. They knew what all they had to do that day, but we could do it in pretty much whatever order we wanted to. And they would always pick the read-alouds first. And as they got older and the read-alouds got longer, I had to switch that up a little bit because, well, anybody that's read a lot with Sonlight knows that your voice can get a little tired. And so we had to stop doing 2 read-alouds in a row, even though that's what they would have preferred. So that did change a little bit. let's see, another thing about what read aloud time looks like in your house, I bet you there are no two homes where it looks the same. And you might have a picture in your head of what it's supposed to look like maybe you're all supposed to be sitting on the couch together, and in reality, it might not be that way, but that is totally fine. Some kids need to be doing something with their hands while they're listening. And that's okay too. I've got one that has to do that, and one that really does need to just sit with me and be kind of still to pay attention. So it may look very different. I've got a question here. How and when do you do the vocabulary stuff? It never seems to flow or feel helpful. And the vocabulary words are included, well, obviously to help develop their vocabulary. So what do you do with them? The words are in the books, and so naturally just reading the book will enable you to see what the word means. Every now and then you may come across one of them that really doesn't make sense to you, and that instructor's guide is there so that you can look up the definition of that word. You can use those vocabulary words in your IG however you would like. You can look them over beforehand with your children. You could just look them over beforehand yourself so that when you encounter it, when you read aloud, you can make sure that they understand what it's talking about. You could use those vocabulary words afterwards as kind of a review, because it'll tell you a little bit about the context will be there with that vocabulary word. So you can use them beforehand with your children or just by yourself to look over them. You could use them afterwards as a review with the different words. So it's pretty flexible how you want to use those. And so let's see, back to the part about what your homeschool looks like. I would love to hear from y'all. What is read aloud time like for you? And is there a certain time of day that it works best for you? Are there certain things your kids need to be doing while you're reading? If you do have some that need to be doing something with their hands, Play-Doh is a good idea. Just free drawing or coloring is a great idea. As my daughter grew older, she would do different things, like even things she learned at our co-op, which this is our co-op shirt, has a book on it. I love it. Things that I could not teach her, but she could do while doing read aloud. Things like knitting and just making different things with her hands. Legos was a fun one. Now Legos, it might depend on the child, because they could totally just go off in their own little world with the Legos. A puzzle, putting a puzzle together is something my daughter loved to do. And when it was completed, we left it out a while, and she would just kind of pull up a corner of it, like a quarter of the whole puzzle, just kind of rip it up and just redo that part. And she did that over and over again during read alouds. And I keep mentioning my daughter because, like I said, my son, he didn't do all these things with his hands while he was reading. For him to concentrate, he just sat and listened. So everybody's different. Magnetic tiles is another suggestion by one of the people that's watching, and that is also a great idea. Let's see. What else? I don't know. Now that we're coming to the end of our homeschool journey, my daughter's a senior this year. I mean, she is the first to tell you that the read-alouds were her, I say were because she's been in high school for a while and we haven't done the read-alouds in a while, but the read-alouds were her absolute favorite part of school. And I know sometimes it seems like, oh, well, if it's just the easiest part to do and it just feels like the best part of your day, well, it can't be that important, right? That's just the fun part of school. But that's why I wanted to share with you all the 7-part test, that these books that are included in your read aloud sections are there for a reason. They have passed the 7-part test of good quality literature. And then the reasons that Sonlight publishes for reading aloud to your children. So good. And so we've got a couple of comments. We do school. Oh, this one's, they're going away. Hang on a second. There we go. SLT 103, we do school in our office. My daughter doesn't want to sit on the couch. And sometimes she draws or plays with something. We do the vocabulary while reading, and she says, what is that? That's perfect. Because a lot of the times the context of what you're reading, they gain that word just naturally. And sometimes you need to look things up. During read aloud during lunch hour, That is good too. I have heard some moms say during snack time or something when the kids are busy with their hands and their mouths are busy, they can't talk, you could do a read aloud over snack time. So Football Girl's mom does it during lunch. And Legos, yes, Legos are good. Puzzles, coloring too. Lots of things. Melty beads. Now that sounds like a fun one. And let's see. So if there's anything else, you guys can pop that in. That's about all I have. So this video will be put on the app, and it would be great to keep the conversation going, what you guys like to do during Read Aloud time. Because it's always fun to get ideas from everybody, because there might be something you never even thought of doing, and it turns out to just be a big hit at your house. So I thank you all for joining me. Look for the repost in the app. If you did tune in a little late, what I went over were Sonlight's reasons for doing read-alouds and the 7-part test that a book has to pass to end up in a Sonlight package. So y'all have a great weekend.